Thanks. Thank you very much. Check. Thank you. Come on, give it up. Let's go. Let's come on, y'all. I know you've been sitting in chairs for a long time. Can everybody hear me well enough up here? Okay. Raise your hand if you can't hear me. All right. Everybody here is smart. So my name is Carvell Wallace, and I want to tell you guys a story first. How many of you have ever DJ'd before? You ever DJ? Anybody DJ? Okay. So at New Year's Eve, I tried to DJ for the first time in my life, and I thought I'm pretty good. Like I play music for a long time, and I have a background in the arts. And so my friend was like, "Man, I'm having this party, but I feel like the people don't know the thing, so you got to come and bring the thing." So I'm like, "All right." So I borrow this DJ equipment from this dude. He shows me how to use it, and I sit in my room for 4 days, like putting together cuts and scratches and like just every 1994 thing you can think of. Like I'm really ready to go and deliver at this party, you know. So I walk out to the thing, and I go up to the grandstand, and I start spinning my first little track, and people are the floor gets a little quiet, and then I hit it with the next thing, and then the floor gets kind of quiet, and then with 3 tracks in, there was like one person in the middle of the floor. By 4 tracks in, people were like trying to fight me because I was so bad, you know, and so the moral of the story is that I thought I was going to be great, and I was terrible at it, and so I hope that doesn't happen here, because I was like sitting in the same chair when I made up this presentation. So my name is Carvell Wallace, and I'm a person who doesn't belong in tech. I'm a person who doesn't belong in tech. And that's really important to me because in my vision, eventually everyone in tech will be someone that doesn't belong in tech. That's what I see happen. Thank you. Come on, you get that. So you know, this weekend is getting me really excited because we're talking about inclusion, and I like the idea, but then I have a problem with it because I don't believe that diversity is inclusion, it's reflection. We live in a diverse world. We might want to call this tech fidelity because we just need tech to catch up with the planet. Right? We don't need to catch up with tech and find a way, hey, can we play in your game, guys? Come on, can we get in? Come on, let us in. No, the world works in this way, and we need tech to reflect it. And that's what I'm here to talk about. What are the things that keep us from being able to do this? And all right, so my talk is called Why There's No Such Thing as Tech, or 5 Myths that increase diversity in tech. So the other thing I want to say is that everything I tell you is going to be something that is my opinion, but I don't know if it's true. And that's important because a lot of times people who have a microphone, we think that they're telling the truth, and or that what they're saying is correct. And I don't know if what I'm saying is correct. I'm going to tell you what my experience is, and you can check your own experience. If it's true for you, then good. If not, let me know what else is happening. And I think that we need to question people with microphones a little more frequently than we do. And I think we need to be pretty suspicious of any time someone gets on stage and says, hey, folks, here's how it is. We need to be like, maybe, but let's find out for sure. How many of you have ever seen the Tumblr, This Is Not an Insight? No? Oh, man. Okay, so I hope I don't get anyone mad with this, but This Is Not an Insight is my favorite Tumblr because I'm a class clown by nature, in case you haven't picked that up yet. And what they do when This Is Not an Insight is they sit in tech conferences and make fun of things that people say as though they were insights, but they're not insights. And so this one right here is like, someone was like, how do you find bloggers? Twitter and Instagram are places to look. So you're saying I should look on the internet for people that are on the internet. That is not an insight. Someone else in the talk said, imagination, ideas, and digital strategy don't cost anything. Get people talking about something you're doing. So you're saying that I should be using the internet to get people to know about what I'm doing and talk about it. Again, this is not an insight. This is the kind of stuff that we should already know. By finding the leader, you can become the leader. Deep thoughts. So I just say that to put a little levity here because we don't, a lot of people are up here saying stuff that, is not that bright, and maybe I'm one of them. So feel free to think I'm not that bright. I invite you to do that. But this, to me, is an insight. This is Theo Jansen, who's one of my favorite designers conceptually, and his idea is that the walls between art and engineering exist only in our minds, and this idea of breaking down walls that's what I'm here to talk about. I'm not talking about how to break down walls. I'm talking how to unsee the walls that we have imagined. And in this case, it's the wall between social good and tech, the wall between nonprofit and tech. But first, a little about me. I was born a child. Winner. Thank you. Good night. You guys are wonderful. I love you. Please tip your waitress. So, my early life has a lot to do with who I am, and I firmly believe in integration as a concept, and so everything about who I am is what makes me valuable to this space that I'm in right now. And I grew up, my mother was very young when she had me, and she had a lot of mental issues, and so my early life was fraught with all kinds of, we were homeless, and then there's no food, and then they repossessed the car, and then the lights were off, and so I watched this woman, try to figure out how to make a way from week to week, from day to day. And one of the things that really occurred to me at an early age, and that feeds my whole understanding of life, is that, man, some people are really bright and effective and still can't get momentum at all. And that doesn't have to do with them. That has to do with us collectively, the system that we live in. And this affected kind of who I was. And fortunately for me, I discovered that I was pretty good at being on stage in front of people. And so I discovered acting at an early age. And then I started kind of getting work and getting scholarships and being able to bring in some income for that. And I went to an arts high school, and then I went to a conservatory in New York City. And then I turned into this guy that you see right here, right? And I basically became friends with a bunch of white kids because I was at NYU, and it's a really expensive school. And so all my friends are white kids. And they were like, hey, why don't we do drugs and make art and wear funny costumes? And I was like, actually, that sounds like a great idea. That's so much better than what I was doing when we were homeless. This is a wonderful thing. And so I joined with these people, and then what I noticed was the second half of what makes me who I am, which is that these kids were like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to start a film festival on my roof. And then a year later, it's the biggest film festival. And then, I'm going to do today? I'm going to start a magazine. And then 3 months later, they're traveling around Europe. And, and I was like, boy, that's weird because they didn't even do anything. And my mother was doing all this stuff, and she was like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to hope we get enough money to eat. That's what I'm going to hope for. And again, so that was the second half of man, there are these two different worlds here, and they're not connecting. And so when I graduated from NYU, the party was over, and I had to get a job, and so I went to work for a nonprofit that did theater with kids that were locked up. And this is a picture of Spofford Detention Facility, the now defunct Spofford, formerly in the Bronx. And I worked with kids in the Bronx, and I worked with kids at Rikers Island. And I was terrible at it because I was 22 years old, and I was still, I wasn't very good at it. But what I did realize in that process is that, there's a lot of things that we do in nonprofit that are bad product deliveries. I didn't know the word for that, but I just was clear that we were delivering a product and compelling people to use it, and that the people didn't have a choice in whether or not they used it, and it didn't matter if it sucked. Because if I was in charge of building something, and I was 22 years old and had just got finished dressing weird and doing drugs and playing music, then I don't think we're delivering a very good product to these kids, right? And that kind of got me thinking about the other big thing that I always think about, which is what is the biggest problem that we have and how can I address it? And I continued my life. I got married. I had some kids. I never cleaned my bathtub. These are the kinds of things that went on. But this problem remained as I continued to work in nonprofit, and one company failed, and then I worked at another, and then this turned into a 15-year career in youth nonprofit. And my question remained, what's the biggest problem we have in this issue, and how can I fix it? And so that brings me to you guys here today. And so the question is, what's the difference between tech and nonprofit? I've taken a moment to note these things. The biggest difference between tech and nonprofit is absolutely nothing. I invite you to no longer think of there being a difference between these two. And my talk is about how to unsee the wall that exists here between tech and nonprofit. And so in my career, having worked in nonprofit for 15 years, then going to work at a startup, then founding my own company, I've identified 5 myths that I think people really struggle with between tech and nonprofit. Belief number 1 is that doing genuine social good is at odds with earning revenue. And I know that none of you are here because you believe that, so I'm preaching to the choir here. But why, so like the question that we have here is, how does money get made? Right? I'm no economist, but I believe money gets made when someone's got a problem, and then you've got a solution, and you sell them the solution, and the money they give you for the solution is more than it costs for you to make it, and then you go out to dinner. Like, that's pretty much how that works, right? It's exchange of, I got value, you got value, we exchange it for cash, and on terms that work for both of us. If you go into a nonprofit and ask them if they have a problem, they'll say yes. If you ask them if they passionately want the kids they work with to be successful, to go to college, to find a way to be mentally stable, they'll say yes, passionately. They mean it. They want it. If you ask them if it's working, they'll say, not really. It's hard. It's like a lot of things. It's a big problem. You'll get the big problem speech. So you've got all these people who are passionate about something. They're trying to do something, but they're not getting the solution that they want. And yet money's being paid. If you then go up to the director's office and say, is it working? He'll give you like the whole brochure, and then he'll be like, but secretly, I don't know, it's like hard, it's a big issue and all that stuff. And so I thought about that, and I imagine if you went to McDonald's and were like, hey, are you guys making hamburgers? And they were like, yeah. And they're like, is it working? And they were like, it's not working that good. Like, I don't know. No, they're like, we're making so many hamburgers. We literally made 1 million hamburgers while you were asking this question. Like, we are killing it hamburger-wise. And so when people have a problem and you offer a solution, then there's money to be made. So this, to me, is some BS right here, that you can't earn revenue. If you have a solution for a problem that people care about, the money, people will pay for it. Okay, but this brings me to my bigger question, which is, why is it that nonprofits stay in business delivering products that we agree don't work, right? And so it has to do with products, right? If I make Kleenex, I need Kleenex to work, and I need my Kleenex to be good. And so I'm going to keep designing my Kleenex and my Kleenex delivery system until everyone is happy with it. And because if I don't, they don't buy it, and I don't get paid. So in this case, the user is the payer, so they get to decide. In nonprofit, the user is a young person, but they're not the ones paying. And I'm not a flag waver for capitalism by any stretch of the imagination, but in its purest form, this is a democratic concept, the idea that I get to vote with my dollar whether or not your thing is good. But we had young people coming into our program that were like, this program sucks. And we're like, well, what are you going to do, not come? Right? You're compelled to come. Like, the court said you had to come. Like, we'll kick you out of program if you don't come. And so they never got a chance to be a part of the product design process. So this is how nonprofits make products that don't work. The payers were the funders, and they had a problem. They were like, we have this $1 million fund, and we need to show someone that we're doing something good. And we were like, oh, we got a solution for that. Here's 16 spreadsheets and a brochure that lets you know, right? And the government had to be like, we want to make sure that we're putting our money in the thing, and so we get it reelected. And we got a solution for that. Here's 16 spreadsheets, a website, and we're going to trot a couple youth out on stage, and then everyone's going to clap, and boom, problem solved. So they're the payers. We're solving their problems. The people with the problems have to be the makers of the solution, and they have to be the payers of the solution. The people with the problems have to be the makers, and they have to be the payers. So the second myth is that social work is the only way to do something good. And when I look at Indiegogo, and this is my favorite Indiegogo campaign. Does everyone know about this? This was the campaign to make a constitutional challenge to the anti-gay laws in Singapore. This campaign raised $230,000 in something like a month and a half, right? When I look at this one, Twilio.org, which uses SMS to allow people who are experiencing trafficking and gender-based violence to text for help secretively and get help immediately. When I look at Detroit Water Project, which crowdfunded for people to pay their water bills in Detroit. When I look at my own project, which is Vibosity, we're building an app to do social emotional assessment of young people using photographs. Get at me afterwards if you're interested in learning more about it. And we use that personality data to put it in the hands of people that are actually trying to work with young people. There are ways that we can do tech for social good, so that's a myth. Belief number 3 is that tech people are full of shit, pardon my language, only concerned with selling snake oil to VCs. Actually, this one is kind of true. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. Because people in nonprofit that I worked with over these 15 years are the most direct, honest, clear, developed, compassionate people in the world, but they're not working in tech. So if we can bring these people into tech, then this can change. And the fourth one is that tech is a wealthy white boys club that actually can't help anyone in marginalized communities. I did a little research. This is one that I came up when I talked to a lot of my nonprofit friends about, come on, come work for a company, come do in tech. Oh, I don't know how to do it. So I looked at, you guys know about AppCrawler, search engine? All right, so I looked up, I just checked a bunch of different things in AppCrawler to see how many apps existed. Travel, about 500, over 500. Dating, over 500. Equality, 16. Poverty, 13. Justice, 106, but 103 of them had to do with comic books. Just the numbers don't lie, y'all. And so here's my quote. This is an insight. Get ready to tweet this, write this down. A problem is best solved by the people that have it. A problem is best solved by the people that have it. And so the fifth belief is that a career in tech requires that I know how to code. And here I'm going to tell a little story. Once upon a time, a developer's wife, partner sent her to the store with the following instructions. Get a loaf of bread, and if they have eggs, get a dozen too. So what did the developer do? Came back with 13 loaves of bread. Okay, the point is that the point is that everyone is good at specific things and specific ways of thinking. And this is what diversity is. This is what the core of diversity is. So if everyone in your team is developers, then they get 13 loaves of bread because you gave them the direct instructions. They get a loaf of bread, and if eggs, then get 13. So get a dozen too, so then they are. So they got a dozen, right? So, but we need all kinds of people thinking in tech, not just developers. We need all kinds of thinking because we all do different things. So we're talking about UX, product, marketing, social, community management, design, HR, training, sales evaluation, copy, tech writing, law, QA, project management. These are places where we can all, every person I've worked with in a nonprofit, I can bring them over and have them do this. All right, so I like to stop using the word tech to describe what we do. I like to just call it work. Work is an activity involving mental or physical effort to be done to achieve a purpose or result. So I say no tech, I say no nonprofit, I say no social good, I say let's just call it what it is, man. Let's just get to work. That's it. Thank you. Time for questions? Okay. So it looks like we have time for one question. Yeah, one question. Right. Okay. Looks like we have time for one question. Because you just roasted me, I have to come to you now.
The thing I wish we could do is just disrupt philanthropy, right? Because it's like rife with systemic racism. Like, how are we going to solve the problems in our society if the very institution that's supposed to be innovating and leading social change is itself embedded with all these challenges, and then they're the decision makers, so everybody is kowtowing up to them. And what we should have is like a massive website where all organizations put their programs on there, and they scroll through and decide, oh yeah, I think those guys are doing really good. I'm gonna send them a check instead of all of us like bowing to them.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I think you're right. There is a kind of serfdom among nonprofits, and it has to do with who's able to raise the most money and who's able to have the nicest website. My friends and I used to jokingly make that we were going to do something secret called the Nonprofit Elimination Project, where we would just like a secret guerrilla group just kill nonprofits that sucked without anyone knowing, sneak up in the night and just like just unplug the whole thing. So we're still working on that, but you didn't hear it from me. But I think there's 2 points to what you're saying that are important. I think the first one is that so we have this problem where we think where money is our religion in America, and we think that anytime someone makes money that everything they're doing is right. And we have to get a different God, y'all. We can't just be like, everyone makes money, so whatever you're doing is to the good. And then this is the last point on that, which is that, I was talking with Deldep in the green room about this. I'm not even that interested in getting people in nonprofit to make products. It's the methodology of problem solving in tech that needs to be disseminated in the hands of more people. Got to put that tool, the way of problem solving. Tech is really good at making products. That's why we're on Twitter. That's why you're looking at your phone right now. You're not looking at a nonprofit website right now. You're looking at a phone with a product that someone designed super duper freaking good. And so that way of thinking about products, that way of thinking about users, that way of thinking about stickiness and compulsion and gamification, those are tools we need in the hands of people in nonprofit so they can be applied to greater problems than just travel and dating, and that's what we're here for. So I think that's it. I think that's all we have time for. Thank you very much.